Warren Drummond stood in line at the small downtown coffee shop, his tailored charcoal suit drawing a few glances from the morning crowd, when he heard a laugh that made his heart stop. It was a sound he had not heard in 10 years, but one that still lived in his memories like a favorite song he could never quite forget. He turned slowly, almost afraid to look, and there she was. Tessa Lawson stood near the pickup counter, her dark hair shorter than he remembered, falling just past her shoulders in soft waves. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater, casual and effortless, so different from the polished designer clothes of the women who usually surrounded him at galas and business dinners. She was laughing with the barista, her whole face lighting up in that way that had once made him feel like the luckiest man alive. Warren's hands went cold. He had not prepared for this moment, despite the hundreds of times he had imagined it over the years. What would he say? Would she even want to talk to him? Before he could decide whether to approach her or slip out unnoticed, Tessa turned toward the door and their eyes met. The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. Her smile faltered, and Warren watched a dozen emotions flicker across her face in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, something that might have been pain, and then a careful neutrality that hurt more than anger would have. "Warren," she said, and his name on her lips after all these years felt like coming home and being locked out at the same time. "Tessa." He stepped out of line, abandoning his coffee order entirely. "I cannot believe it is you." She clutched her cup with both hands, as if she needed something to hold onto. Yeah, small world. An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with all the words they had never said. Warren had become one of the youngest billionaires in the country through his luxury hotel empire. But standing in front of the woman he had loved and left behind, he felt like the uncertain 22-year-old he had been when they broke up. "You look good," he said finally, and immediately felt stupid. She looked more than good. She looked exactly like the woman he had spent a decade trying to forget and failing miserably. "Thanks. You too." Tessa glanced at the door and Warren's chest tightened with the fear that she was about to bolt. "I heard about your success. Drummond Hotels. That is incredible, Warren, really? Can we talk?" The words rushed out before he could stop them. "I know I have no right to ask, but could we sit down for a few minutes, please?" Tessa hesitated, and Warren could see her weighing the decision. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, a few minutes." They found a small table by the window, and Warren sat across from her, trying to figure out where to start. The morning sunlight caught in her hair, and he remembered lazy Sunday mornings when they were in college, when the whole world had felt full of possibility. "I did not know you were back in the city," Tessa said, her voice carefully neutral. "I thought you were based in New York now." "I am, mostly, but I am opening a new property here, so I have been back and forth for the past few months." Warren ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he had never quite broken. "What about you? Are you still teaching?" "I am, 4th grade at Roosevelt Elementary." Her face softened when she talked about her work, and Warren felt a pang of recognition. She had always wanted to be a teacher, had talked about it with such passion even when they were 19 and planning their future together. "That is perfect for you," he said quietly. "You always had a gift with kids." Tessa took a sip of her coffee, and Warren noticed she still ordered the same thing, a vanilla latte with extra foam. Some things never changed. "Why did you want to talk, Warren?" Her directness caught him off guard, but it was so quintessentially Tessa that he almost smiled. She had never been one to dance around difficult subjects. "Honestly, I do not know. I saw you, and suddenly 10 years disappeared, and all I could think was that I had to talk to you. Even if you told me to go to hell." "I am not going to tell you to go to hell." Tessa set down her cup and looked at him with those warm brown eyes that had always been able to see right through him. "We were kids, Warren. We made the choices we thought were right at the time." "I made the wrong choice." The confession tumbled out before he could stop it. "I thought I had to choose between you and building the business. My father kept telling me I needed to focus, that relationships were distractions, that I could have everything I wanted later if I just worked hard enough first, and I was stupid enough to believe him. Tessa's expression shifted, a crack appearing in her careful composure. You broke my heart. I know. Warren's throat felt tight. I broke my own too, I just did not realize it until it was too late. You called me a distraction, you said loving me was getting in the way of your future. Her voice was quiet, but Warren could hear the old hurt underneath. Do you know how that felt? To be told I was an obstacle instead of a partner? I was an idiot, worse than an idiot, I was a coward. Warren leaned forward, desperate for her to understand. I have spent 10 years building an empire, and every success felt empty because you were not there to share it with. I dated other people, tried to move on, but nobody ever came close to what we had. Tessa looked away, blinking rapidly. Do not do this, Warren. Do what? Do not come back into my life after 10 years and say things like that. It is not fair. I know it is not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but I saw you and I realized I have been lying to myself for a decade, pretending I got over you when I never did, not even close. A tear slipped down Tessa's cheek and she brushed it away impatiently. I built a life without you, a good life. I have my students, my friends, my little apartment with a window garden. I am happy. Are you? Warren asked gently. Or are you okay, because those are different things? Tessa stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. I have to go, this was a mistake. Warren stood too, panic rising in his chest. Tessa, wait, please. Can I see you again? Just to talk, no pressure, no expectations. I just want a chance to know you again. She paused at the table, her hand gripping the back of her chair. I do not know if that is a good idea. It is probably a terrible idea, Warren admitted. But I have spent 10 years making safe, smart business decisions, and none of them made me as happy as 5 minutes with you just did. So maybe it is time I made a decision with my heart instead of my head. Tessa looked at him for a long moment, and Warren held his breath. Finally, she pulled a pen from her bag and scribbled something on a napkin. That is my number. I am not promising anything, Warren, but you can call me. Maybe. She walked out before he could respond, and Warren sank back into his chair, staring at the napkin with her number written in her familiar handwriting. His hands were shaking. Warren waited 3 agonizing days before he called her, trying not to seem desperate even though he absolutely was. When Tessa answered on the 4th ring, he could hear traffic noise in the background. Hi, it is Warren. I know, I saved your number. There was amusement in her voice and Warren felt something loosen in his chest. Are you free Friday night? I would love to take you to dinner. Tessa was quiet for a moment. Where? Anywhere you want, you pick. There is a little Italian place in my neighborhood, Antonio's. It is nothing fancy, but the food is incredible. Perfect. 7 o'clock, okay, but Warren, this is just dinner, 2 old friends catching up, that is all. That is all, Warren agreed. Even though they both knew it was a lie, Friday took forever to arrive. Warren caught himself daydreaming during a crucial investor meeting, his mind wandering to memories of Tessa laughing at his terrible jokes, the way she used to steal fries off his plate, how she sang off-key in the shower and did not care who heard. His assistant had to repeat a question twice before he snapped back to attention. When Friday finally came, Warren changed his outfit 4 times before settling on dark jeans and a navy sweater. He wanted to look good but not overdressed, casual but put together. He felt like a teenager getting ready for prom. Antonio's turned out to be a cozy little restaurant with red checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. Tessa was already there when he arrived, looking beautiful in a simple green dress that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. You are early, Warren said, sliding into the booth across from her. Nervous habit. I am always 15 minutes early to everything. You used to tease me about it. I remember, Warren smiled. I also remember you getting mad at me for being late all the time. Some things never change. Actually, I am on time now. Turns out when you run a multinational corporation, people expect punctuality. They ordered wine and pasta, and slowly the conversation began to flow more naturally. Tessa told him about her students. The challenges of teaching in underfunded schools, the small victories that made it all worthwhile. Warren found himself captivated by her passion, the way her whole face became animated when she talked about a struggling student finally grasping a difficult concept. "What about you?" Tessa asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "Is being a billionaire everything you thought it would be?" Warren considered the question. "Honestly, it is lonely. I have business associates and people who want something from me, but real friends are hard to come by when everyone knows your net worth. And dating is a nightmare. I never know if someone likes me or likes my money." "That sounds awful." "It is, but I chose it, so I cannot complain." Warren took a sip of wine. "Can I ask you something personal, maybe? Is there someone, a boyfriend or husband or partner?" Tessa shook her head. "There have been people over the years, but nothing serious, nothing that lasted. My last relationship ended about a year ago. He was a nice guy, a teacher at my school, but it just did not work." "Why not?" She looked at him directly. "Because he was not you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Warren felt his heart start to race. "Tessa, I know what I am saying." She set down her fork. "I tried to move on, I really did, but nobody ever measured up to what we had, and I hated you for that sometimes, for ruining me for anyone else. I am so sorry." Warren reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Tessa put her hand in his. Her skin was warm, familiar. "If I could go back and change everything, I would." "Would you really? Would you give up everything you built?" It was a fair question, and Warren thought about it seriously. "I would have done it differently. I would have included you instead of pushing you away. We could have built something together. We were so young, Warren, maybe it would not have worked anyway. Or maybe it would have been exactly what we both needed." He rubbed his thumb across her knuckles, marveling that he was actually touching her after all this time. "Can I be completely honest with you, please? I never stopped loving you, not for one single day in 10 years. I tried, God knows I tried. But you were always there in the back of my mind, the standard I measured everyone else against, and nobody ever came close." Tessa's eyes filled with tears. "This is crazy. You cannot just show up after a decade and expect to pick up where we left off." "I know, I am not expecting that. I am just asking for a chance to start over, to do it right this time." "What does that even mean? You live in New York, my whole life is here, details. We can figure out the details if you are willing to try." Warren squeezed her hand. "Tell me you did not feel it too. Tell me I am imagining this connection and I will walk away right now and never bother you again." Tessa pulled her hand back and wiped her eyes. "I cannot tell you that, because I felt it the second I saw you in that coffee shop. It was like no time had passed at all, and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because you broke my heart once, Warren. I do not know if I can survive you doing it again." Warren leaned back, trying to find the right words. "I cannot promise I will be perfect. I will probably work too much and forget to call sometimes and mess up in 1,000 ways. But I can promise I will never walk away from you again. Not unless you tell me to go. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too young and stupid to realize it. But I realize it now. And if you give me a second chance, I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Tessa stared at him, tears streaming down her face now. "I must be out of my mind. Is that a yes?" "It is a maybe, a very cautious maybe. I need to take this slow, Warren. We need to really get to know each other again. We are not the same people we were at 22. I will take a maybe." Warren felt a grin spreading across his face. "I will take anything you are willing to give me." They finished dinner, and Warren walked Tessa home through the cooling evening air. Her apartment was in a converted brownstone with flower boxes in the windows, exactly the kind of place he would have expected her to live. At her door, they stood facing each other, and Warren fought the urge to pull her into his arms. "Thank you for tonight," he said, "for giving me a chance. Do not make me regret it." But Tessa was smiling, and Warren's heart soared. "Can I see you again tomorrow?" "I have brunch with friends at 11, but I am free in the afternoon." "Perfect. I will plan something." Tessa unlocked her door, then paused. "Warren, I am scared, me too," he admitted, "but some things are worth being scared for." She kissed him on the cheek, soft and brief, before disappearing inside. Warren stood on her stoop for a full minute, grinning like an idiot before he finally walked back to his car. The next afternoon, Warren picked Tessa up in his Tesla, trying not to think about how right it felt to see her sliding into the passenger seat. He had spent the morning making calls and pulling strings, but it would be worth it if she liked what he had planned. "Where are we going?" Tessa asked as he drove through the city. "It is a surprise." "I hate surprises." "No, you do not. You just say you do." Warren glanced at her. "Trust me," Tessa smiled. "That is a loaded question." They ended up at the Botanical Gardens, which Warren had arranged to have opened privately for 2 hours. Tessa gasped when she realized they had the whole place to themselves. "How did you do this?" "Money has some advantages." Warren took her hand as they walked through the entrance. "I remember you said this was your favorite place in the city. You brought me here once back in college. Do you remember? The Orchid Pavilion. It was our 6-month anniversary." Tessa looked up at him, surprise and pleasure mixing on her face. "I cannot believe you remember that." "I remember everything about us." They wandered through the gardens, talking and laughing, slowly rebuilding the easy intimacy they had once shared. Warren told her about the pressures of running his company, the difficult decisions he faced, the weight of being responsible for thousands of employees. Tessa listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions that showed she really understood. In turn, she opened up about her struggles with the school system, her frustration with bureaucracy and lack of funding, her dreams of starting a program to help underprivileged kids. Warren found himself thinking about how he could help, foundations he could start, connections he could make. But he kept quiet, not wanting to overstep. When they reached the Orchid Pavilion, Warren stopped. "This is where I should have proposed to you, you know, if I had not been such an idiot." Tessa turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "We were 22, we were not ready to get married." "Maybe not, but I should have at least tried to hold on to what we had. Instead, I threw it away like it meant nothing when it actually meant everything." "Stop beating yourself up about the past. We cannot change it." But Tessa moved closer until they were standing toe to toe among the exotic flowers. "We can only decide what happens next." "And what do you want to happen next?" Warren asked, his voice rough. "This," Tessa whispered and kissed him. It was like falling and flying at the same time, like coming home after years of being lost. Warren wrapped his arms around her and poured 10 years of longing into that kiss, and Tessa kissed him back with equal intensity. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I missed you," Tessa said against his chest. "Every single day I missed you. I am here now, and I am not going anywhere." Over the next few weeks, Warren and Tessa fell back into each other's lives with surprising ease. Warren extended his stay in the city, conducting most of his business via video calls and flying to New York only when absolutely necessary. He met Tessa after school, brought coffee to her classroom, and sat in tiny chairs while 4th graders excitedly showed him their projects. Tessa integrated into Warren's world more gradually, uncomfortable with the wealth and attention that came with dating a billionaire. The first time paparazzi photographed them leaving a restaurant, she nearly panicked. "This is insane," she said in the car afterward. "Why do they care who you are dating?" "Because people are nosy and my love life has been tabloid fodder for years." Warren took her hand. "I am sorry, I should have warned you. I am a 4th grade teacher from a middle-class family. I am not equipped for this. You are equipped for anything." "You are the strongest person I know." Warren pulled her close. "But if this is too much, we can talk about it. We can figure out ways to keep you out of the spotlight as much as possible." Tessa leaned against him. "I am not going anywhere, I just need time to adjust." 2 months into their rekindled relationship, Warren had to return to New York for a board meeting he could not miss. Tessa came with him, taking a long weekend from school. Warren put her up in the penthouse suite of his flagship hotel, trying not to be hurt when she insisted on her own room. I am not ready to move that fast, she explained. I know we have history, but this still feels new and fragile. I understand, no pressure. And he meant it, even though sleeping down the hall from her was torture. The board meeting went longer than expected, and Warren did not get back to the hotel until after 9. He found Tessa in his suite, curled up on the couch with a book. Sorry, I am so late. How was your day? Wonderful, actually. I explored the city, went to 3 museums, and had the best lunch at this little deli in the village. Tessa set down her book. This is an amazing hotel, Warren. The staff is so kind and attentive. You built something really special. Warren sat next to her, loosening his tie. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Can I ask you something? Anything? What is your end game here? With us, I mean, you live in New York, I live here. How is this supposed to work long term? Warren had been thinking about that question constantly. Move to New York with me. Tessa stared at him. What? Move here. There are incredible schools, kids who need great teachers just as much as your students back home. You could have any job you wanted, and we could actually be together, not just on weekends and stolen moments. Warren, I cannot just uproot my entire life. Why not? What is holding you there? My job, my friends, my apartment, my whole life. Tessa stood, pacing. You cannot just expect me to give up everything because it would be more convenient for you. That is not what I am saying. Warren stood too. I am saying we have a second chance at something real, and I do not want to waste it on a long-distance relationship that will slowly fall apart. So I have to be the one to sacrifice. You get to keep your billion-dollar company and your fancy penthouse, and I give up everything I have worked for. That is not fair. Is it not? Tessa's voice rose. You asked me to choose between you and my life once before, Warren, and when I said I wanted both, you walked away. Now you are doing the exact same thing. The words hit Warren like a physical blow. That is not what I am doing. It sounds exactly like what you are doing. Tessa grabbed her bag. I am going to my room. I need some space. She left before Warren could respond, and he sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. Was she right? Was he making the same mistakes all over again? The next morning, Warren woke early and went for a run through Central Park, trying to clear his head. When he got back to the hotel, his assistant was waiting with his schedule for the day. 2 meetings, a conference call with the Tokyo office, and a site visit to the new property in Brooklyn. He canceled all of it. Instead, Warren went to Tessa's suite and knocked on the door. She answered looking tired, her hair in a messy bun, still in pajamas. Can we talk? He asked. Tessa stepped aside to let him in. They sat across from each other at the small dining table by the window, the morning sun streaming in. You were right, Warren said. Last night you were absolutely right. I was asking you to sacrifice everything while I gave up nothing, just like 10 years ago, Warren. Let me finish. Please. He took a deep breath. I have been thinking about this all night, and I realized something. Building this company, making all this money, achieving everything I thought I wanted, none of it matters if I lose you again. So here is what I am proposing. I will move my base of operations back to your city. I will open a new corporate office there. I can run the company from anywhere, really. It will take some restructuring, but it is doable. Tessa's eyes widened. You would do that, for you, in a heartbeat. You have a career you love, students who need you, a community you are part of. I have board meetings and hotels that practically run themselves. It is an easy choice. That is not a small thing you are offering. It is nothing compared to what I am asking from you. Warren reached across the table and took her hands. I am asking you to build a life with me, for real this time, not just dating but actual partnership. Moving in together, combining our lives, figuring out how to make this work for both of us. And yeah, maybe eventually marriage and kids and all of that if you want those things, but only if we can do it as equals. Tears streamed down Tessa's face. I want those things with you. I think I have always wanted them with you. So, is that a yes? It is a yes to taking the next step. To really trying. Tessa squeezed his hands. But we need to do this right, Warren. We need to communicate, to be honest with each other, to make decisions together. I cannot be an afterthought in your life. You are not an afterthought, you are the whole point. Warren stood and pulled her into his arms. "I love you, Tessa. I never stopped. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know how much you mean to me." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "Even when I tried not to, even when it hurt, I never stopped loving you." They spent the rest of the weekend in New York, but this time it was different. They were not two separate people trying to figure out how to fit together. They were a team making plans and dreaming about their future. Warren showed her his favorite places in the city, and Tessa showed him how to see the world with fresh eyes, finding beauty in small moments he usually rushed past. True to his word, Warren began the process of relocating his primary operations. He opened a new headquarters in Tessa's city, a beautiful glass building downtown that quickly became a landmark. He kept his New York presence, but delegated much of the day-to-day management to trusted executives. Some people thought he was crazy for stepping back from the center of the action, but Warren had never been happier. 6 months after they reconnected in that coffee shop, Warren and Tessa moved into a renovated loft in the Arts District. It was smaller than Warren's penthouse had been, but Tessa filled it with warmth and color, and Warren discovered he preferred her eclectic style to the sterile designer perfection he had been living with. He learned her routines, the way she needed a full hour to wake up slowly with coffee and silence before she was ready to face the day. She learned to understand when he was stressed about work and needed space, and when he needed her to pull him out of his own head. They fought sometimes, usually about him working too much or her being too stubborn, but they always talked it through. Warren started a foundation focused on education funding, and Tessa helped him design programs that would actually make a difference in underfunded schools. She introduced him to her world of dedicated teachers fighting against impossible odds, and he introduced her to donors and administrators who could help. Together, they began to create real change. A year after their reunion, Warren took Tessa back to the botanical gardens. He had arranged another private visit, and as they walked through the orchid pavilion, he felt his heart pounding. "Do you remember what I said the last time we were here?" he asked. "You said this is where you should have proposed to me." "Right." Warren stopped and turned to face her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "So I am fixing that mistake right now." Tessa's hands flew to her mouth as Warren dropped to one knee. "Tessa Lawson, you are the love of my life. You always have been, from the moment I met you at 19 until this very second. I wasted 10 years being too stupid to realize that nothing else matters without you. I do not want to waste another day. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Tessa sobbed, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, yes." The ring was perfect, a simple solitaire that caught the light as Warren slid it onto her finger. They kissed surrounded by orchids, exactly where they should have been 10 years earlier, finally in the right place at the right time. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, surrounded by close friends and family. Tessa wore a simple ivory dress, and Warren could not stop smiling the entire day. His business associates were confused by the modest venue and small guest list, but Warren did not care what anyone thought. This was about him and Tessa, about the life they were building together. Tessa's students were flower girls and ring bearers, tripping over themselves in excitement. Warren's father, who had pushed him to leave Tessa all those years ago, admitted he had been wrong. "That girl is the best thing that ever happened to you," he told Warren during the reception. "Do not mess it up this time." "I will not," Warren promised. They honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of wine and pasta and wandering through ancient cities. Tessa had never traveled much, and Warren loved seeing everything through her eyes. She made friends with shopkeepers and waiters, practiced her terrible Italian, and dragged Warren to every museum and church she could find. He would have been happy doing nothing but watching her be happy. When they returned home, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Warren continued running his company, but he made sure to be home for dinner most nights. Tessa kept teaching, though she also became more involved with the foundation, helping to shape education policy and funding initiatives. They were partners in every sense of the word. 2 years into their marriage, Tessa came home from a doctor's appointment with news that made Warren's heart stop. "I am pregnant," she said, showing him the ultrasound photo. "We are having a baby." Warren stared at the grainy image, emotions overwhelming him. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Tessa asked, suddenly uncertain. Happy does not even begin to cover it. Warren pulled her close, careful not to squeeze too hard. "I am terrified and thrilled and so in love with you I can barely breathe. This is everything I never knew I wanted." Their daughter was born on a rainy spring morning, a tiny perfect thing with Tessa's dark hair and Warren's blue eyes. They named her Claire, and Warren fell in love all over again the moment he held her. Watching Tessa with their daughter, Warren was struck by how close he had come to missing all of this. If they had not run into each other in that coffee shop, if Tessa had not been willing to give him a second chance, he would have gone through life never knowing this kind of joy. "What are you thinking about?" Tessa asked one night as they watched Claire sleep in her crib. "How lucky I am, how I almost lost you, how grateful I am that you forgave me." "I think we both got a second chance," Tessa said, leaning against him. "We were not ready the first time. We had to grow up, figure out who we were separately before we could really be together. Maybe, but I still wish I had not wasted 10 years. Those years were not wasted. They made us who we are now." Tessa turned to face him. "I would not change anything, Warren, not even the heartbreak. Because it all led us here." Warren kissed her softly, marveling at her wisdom. She was right, of course. Everything had happened exactly as it needed to. When Claire was 2, they had a son, Jacob, who came into the world screaming and did not stop for the first 6 months. Warren learned to function on 3 hours of sleep, to change diapers while conducting conference calls, to rock a crying baby while reviewing contracts. His business associates were baffled by his transformation, but Warren did not care. His family was everything. Tessa eventually cut back to part-time teaching so she could focus more on the foundation and their children. She missed the classroom, but she was making a bigger impact through policy work and funding decisions. Together, she and Warren built programs that helped hundreds of thousands of kids across the country. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they went back to the botanical gardens with Claire and Jacob. The kids ran ahead through the orchid pavilion, and Warren pulled Tessa close. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For giving me a second chance, for building this life with me, for being exactly who you are." Warren kissed her forehead. "You are my first love and my forever love. I just needed 10 years to figure that out." Tessa smiled up at him, her eyes shining. "I would wait another 10 years if it meant ending up here with you." But they did not have to wait anymore. They had found their way back to each other, and this time it was for keeps. Warren had learned that success was not measured in dollars or hotels or business deals, but in quiet mornings with his family, in his wife's laugh, in his children's smiles. He had everything he needed right here. As they walked through the gardens with their kids, Warren thought about the broken young man he had been 10 years ago, so convinced that love was a distraction from his goals. He had been wrong about everything that mattered. Love was not a distraction. It was the whole point. And the woman walking beside him, her hand in his, was living proof that some things were worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth everything. Tessa had always been the one. It had just taken him 10 years and a chance encounter in a coffee shop to finally understand what he had lost and fight to get it back. But now that he had her, now that they had built this beautiful life together, Warren knew he would never take it for granted again. Every morning he woke up next to her was a gift. Every ordinary moment was precious, and every day he got to love her was a day well spent. They had their second chance, and Warren was determined to make every moment count.